On behalf of the children and grandchildren of Ina Schellenberg, I offer a warm welcome as you join us in this memorial service for our mother and grandmother. We as a family have been gifted profoundly by who Mum was in our lives, a gift that we named often before and certainly since Mum died on February the 1st. It's been a sacred journey these last few years, supporting Mum in her move from Calgary to Winnipeg and through various other transitions as she grieved the passing of our dad, her partner of 62 years, and as her health declined. Mum's experience was compounded by the impact of pandemic isolation, a complexity that also placed limits on our connections with her, and indeed on our capacity even to gather in person in memory of her. Mum was honest with us about these challenges, but just as open about what sustained her. A deep embrace of family inevitably threaded with her sparkling wit. She invited us into her life in so many important ways. So Mum, your family and friends remember and honor you now with this memorial service in celebration of your life. We begin by offering this prayer. Creator of all that exists, we ask that in this service of remembering our mother and grandmother, your peace may rest on us and on these friends gathered. We are so grateful for the fullness of life and faith that Mum modeled and nurtured, for the courage with which she opened herself to face life's losses. And we pray that this time of remembering her life, now gone from us, may summon us to the sacred goodness that Mum embraced, that it may call us to live as she did, in gratitude and hope. Amen.
I will be reading from Psalm 16, verses 5 to 11. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup, you hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol or let your faithful one see the pit. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is a fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore.
The grace and peace of Jesus Christ to you all. What an incredible privilege it is to be able to offer a brief reflection on the life of Ina Schellenberg for this memorial service. My first memory of Ina was in July of 1998. Rose and I and our two little girls had come to Calgary for a candidating weekend at Foothills Mennonite Church. And as part of that weekend, there was a faith sharing or testimony time that was happening in the fireside room at the church. Several things stand out in my mind from that evening. First, the evening was being emceed by Mike Berrio. And second, before I was asked to share my faith story, Mike called on John Schellenberg to tell the story of the congregation. And I thought that was great. If I was going to share or reveal some of the deeper things that had shaped my life, I would appreciate hearing some of the deeper things about the congregation as well. So John began to talk, and shifting his weight around as he would talk. And he told some really, really good stories. And then with incredible care, he chose words to tiptoe through some of the more thorny times that the church had lived through. And when he was nearing the end, he glanced around the room and he said, "So, there you have it. I could say more if certain people weren't here." And with that, he stopped talking. And I couldn't quite believe what I just heard. And did he actually just say that? And then I looked over at Ina, who was sitting beside him, and I noticed her shoulders were moving, shaking almost, and then her hand went up over her face, and she was laughing, and she could hardly stop herself. John had cracked a joke on a really tense subject. Ina got it, and I thought, these two are partners in crime. Well, little did I know that for me and for the congregation, they were partners in conveying God's grace. Ina grew up in a time of hellfire and brimstone tent revival meetings, sawdust trails, and worm theology, as the former pastor Bill Kruger used to call it. And as I've been reflecting on Ina's life the last couple of days, I've been asking myself, what kind of fortitude does a young person need to have to be able to withstand the traumatizing language along with those tactics that she would have experienced? What kind of a sense of eternal security did Ina have to not fall prey to the messages of wretchedness or unworthiness, or understanding the good news that looked mostly like bad news, and constantly feeling like she was a disappointment to God? Many of her contemporaries who experienced this became possessed by a lifelong feeling of inadequacy, or they turned their backs on the whole thing altogether and walked away. Neither happened with Ina. And when I was preparing for this, I told Terry, whenever I thought of Ina, I thought of David's words in the latter part of Psalm 16. And it's a psalm about trust and confidence and security in God. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You, O God, hold my lot. Period. When I was reading the reflections from the in-laws on a grandson's poetry, you clearly said that this sense of trust and confidence and security were not values that she ascribed to, but characteristics that she embodied and exuded in the way she lived her life. And because of that, Ina had little tolerance for people trying to pretend to be someone they were not. She saw through pretension so quickly. She had that look, and if she got a sense that someone was trying a little bit too hard, she would look, and then she'd turn her head as she was still looking, and then she would blink slowly. And then she may say something that you may or may not be able to repeat. And I know people across the age groups who were so comfortable in her presence, she could relate to anyone as long as they were being true to who they were. And I think she exemplified that authenticity is not bound by age demographics. What kind of a sense of God's presence did she have that Psalm 16 reads like something she could confidently say about her life and her family? The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. Therefore my heart is glad, and my soul rejoices, and my body rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol, or let your faithful one see the pit. You show me the path of life, and in your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. What was it like to have a mother who exuded such confidence in the grace of God? What was it like to have a mother-in-law who, like an Old Testament matriarch, welcomed you into this large family and made you feel like you belong, even if you stumbled over the surname pronunciation? And what was it like to have a grandmother who loved you for exactly who you were and didn't feel the need to try to pressure you into being someone that you were not? What was it like to be loved by someone who loved you like God loves you? I can't answer what that was like for you, but I can observe how I think it shaped you. I look at how the Schellenberg clan has dealt with so much pain and heartache over the past number of years, and I would like to suggest that a significant factor in your ability to deal with it was Ina's deep sense of trust and groundedness, and the way she had of seeking comfort in and among those, and not seeking someone to blame for the things that had gone wrong. Through it all, you as a family have lived into what she embodied. Whenever I came to be with you on any of those occasions, I always had such a sense that I was surrounded by the salt of the earth kind of people. And then something really beautiful, even more beautiful, happened. Over time, you became for Ina what she had been for you all those years. You couldn't take away the profound sadness that comes from losing children, or a daughter-in-law and a husband. But you could be, and you were, the ones to reflect back to her all of the loving characteristics of God that she instilled in you. You moved her to Winnipeg, where more of you were, to be able to better care for her. Those of you at a distance traveled to be here whenever you could. You all admired her for her ability to power through debilitating back pain, and you handled her so carefully through memory loss, never shaming or belittling her. One can only hope to be as cared for by a family as well as she has been these last years. And I can only imagine how difficult it is now to try and grieve her loss in these times of COVID restrictions. It just doesn't seem right. If you would have had the chance, I know what you would have liked this to look different, but this is what we can do for now, and God bless you for all of the effort you are putting into honoring her, a life very well lived. Oh, Ina, how blessed we were to know you. What a gift you were to your family and your church community. What an example you were to those who want to know what it means to live boundlessly and authentically in this world. Ina Schellenberg, may you and may all who have gone before you rest in peace and rise in glory. Amen.
My shepherd will supply my need. Most holy is your name. In pastures fresh you make me feed beside the living stream. You bring my wandering spirit back when I forsake your ways. And lead me for your mercy's sake in paths of truth and grace. When I walk through the shades of death, your presence is my stay. One word of your supporting breath drives all my fears away. Your hand in sight of all my foes does still my table spread. My cup with blessings overflows. Your oil anoints my head. The sure provisions of my God attend me all my days. Oh, may your house be my abode, and all my work be praised. There would I find a settled rest while others go and come. No more a stranger nor a guest, but like a child at home.
Mum had the best laugh. It was spontaneous, contagious, and filled a room with such joy. Often it was near silent as she covered her face with her hands while her tears flowed and her whole body shook. We beamed and we laughed with her and were transported to a place of safety and joy and love that enveloped each one of us. It was a gift that she gave over and over throughout our lives, and one that we will always cherish. Mom was creative. She was skilled, resourceful, and she had a tenacity that carried her through ongoing physical challenges and great personal loss. She was an introvert at heart, and home was everything to her, and her family was her greatest source of security and happiness. Creating a home for a family of 9 could not have been without challenges, but home was never a place any of us dreaded being, and as adults we returned there over and over, and each time it was a gift. Mom loved her children fully and equally. She loved all of her grandchildren. She loved her great-grandchildren. Mom lost 3 significant members of her family that she loved dearly: her daughters Karen and Gail, and her daughter-in-law Ingrid. Her greatest loss came with Dad's passing in 2015, which left a huge void in Mom's life that none of us could fill for her, no matter how much we wished that we could. Mom and Dad were an inspiring team that brought out the best in each other. They parented equally and exceptionally, ran their household in tandem, dreamed together, traveled together to be with their children and grandchildren, continually challenged one another, and never stopped supporting each other. They loved one another early and long, and were together for almost 63 years. Through everything that Mom endured over the last 6 years, she never stopped missing Dad, or asking for him, or wanting to be with him.
Mom dealt with several health issues during her life, the most difficult of these being dementia. At times, it took her to a place of great anxiety, loneliness, and fear that she could not escape. That, combined with the isolation from her family during the COVID pandemic, made for a period of significant mental and physical diminishment for her. When we were able to be with her, her suffering was at times eased by her wit and her humor, but there are also moments of agonizing clarity where she fully understood what she had lost, as well as the trajectory of her future. Those were the most heart-wrenching times to be in Mom's presence. The ways that Mom's life has enriched our lives can never be fully measured or recounted. It will come to us repeatedly through memories and stories that will last our lifetime. Mom loved her family completely, and she was loved fully in return. Her faith carried her through her life, and grace set her free to fulfill her greatest longing, which was to be with Dad again. Ina May Schellenberg, née Hebert, was born in Didsbury on April 19, 1932. She died in Winnipeg, Manitoba on February 1st, 2022. Ina was predeceased by her husband John Schellenberg, her daughters Karen Burial and Gail Schellenberg, and her daughter-in-law Ingrid Jansen. She is survived by 5 of her children: Terry and his partner Brenda, Craig and partner Patricia, Bob and his partner Sandy, Jeff, Kim and her partner Byron, son-in-law Mike and partner Sylvia, as well as 17 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, and her sister Verda and husband Toby. Thank you, Mom, for raising and for nurturing us, for loving us fully, for inspiring us to be truly ourselves, for accepting us just as we are, and for showing us that even in the darkest moments of life, laughter will draw us together and help guide us through. We will miss you deeply, but we are so thankful that you were able to go. We will always celebrate you with joy, laughter, love, and with unyielding gratitude.
About 15 years ago, Mom and Dad gave all of us kids a wonderful Christmas gift. They wrote a history book, the story of their lives to that point, complete with pictures, genealogies of each sides of their respective families, a chronology of their lives growing up and memories of their lives together. In short, their story. I would like to read part of that story that Mum wrote for us, in her own voice. My mum and dad, Elizabeth and Peter, were married in 1925 at the Bergtall Church in Didsbury, Alberta. My mum was a woman of prayer. She prayed fervently each day for each of her children and grandchildren. She was truly concerned about each one. She had a great sense of humor and would throw her head back and laugh at something that had been said, or a prank that had been played, often by her, or some antic of her children and grandchildren. She was very creative and loved to paint and sew. She was also a horse racing and baseball fan, and each fall would listen to the World Series on the radio. My dad was a great father, a quiet and gentle man. He was a carpenter, and I loved to help him work in the shop where he let me use his tools. I'm sure in my next life I'll be a carpenter. I remember the day that I decided I wanted to learn to drive our car. I asked Dad, and he just tossed me the keys and said, "Go ahead." These were the best times with my dad. Our home was a happy place, full of love and laughter. I remember elementary school was a place of fun, and I was a model student, if I do say so myself. High school was okay. My favorite subject was noon hour because we played softball. I also really enjoyed track and field and won a number of ribbons in high jumping, and I even competed in the pole vault. In the early years, I mostly have bad memories of going to the church in town. There were many altar calls, and often we were frightened by the preachers and were made to feel guilty about everything. But once we got a car, we moved to the Bergtall Mennonite Church in the country, and I loved it. My friends and cousins were there, and we often had big potlucks after the morning service. After high school, I went to Bible school, and there fell in love with Dad. We got engaged in April 1953, complete with a ring with a very tiny diamond. When John approached my dad about us getting married, my dad just said, "Well, we kind of figured on it," and went back to reading his book. We were married in October 1953, and our wedding had some firsts for the Bergtall Mennonite Church. The first wedding to be held on Saturday evening, the first time that the couple and wedding party stood for the whole ceremony, the shortest wedding service, just over 30 minutes from start to end, and the first time the father of the bride walked her down the aisle. We moved all our earthly possessions into our new little home in Coaldale. We loved each other, we were on our own, and we were together. I remember shortly after being married, I wanted to impress John with my baking skills. So I made 3 loaves of bread that unfortunately turned solid and heavy. John was very understanding and kind. A little while later, I noticed him out in the garden. He had dug 3 little graves, buried the loaves, and placed 3 little crosses over them. Then we stood out in the garden, laughing our heads off. After our wedding, I looked for work, but there was nothing suitable, and John continued his work at Western Grocers. But it wasn't long before I was preparing for our first baby, Terry, born in August 1954. What excitement this was for us, and also scary taking this little bundle home when neither of us knew anything about caring for a small baby. The next year we moved to Calgary because John wanted to study to become a teacher, and I wanted to get out of Coaldale. We were pretty excited about this move and excited to be expecting another baby, Karen. This time we had a bit of experience and weren't so worried about taking her home. And I was in heaven because now we had an inside bathroom and a wringer washing machine. By the next November, Gail joined our family. We were glad and loved our new daughter so much, but Terry and Karen weren't very interested. Sometimes we worried and doubted our decisions when money was scarce and we weren't always sure how to make ends meet. We had already sold our car and walked or took the bus everywhere. But John finished his studies and was offered his first teaching position in 1958. The next year, Craig was born, and I remember John's parents came to visit us and brought along a huge bag of groceries. Our little rental house was getting crowded, so John made some temporary rooms in the basement, and then in May 1960, Bob was born. So Craig moved out of the crib in our room, and Bob moved in. By 1962, we really wanted to own our own home that our growing family could fit into. I think we had less than $100 in our bank, but the bank manager gave us a loan, and by July 1st, we were celebrating in our new house in Vista Heights, just in time for the arrival of Jeff in August. The next year was making a play area in the backyard and making sure the older kids were doing okay in school. Each day for the first couple of weeks of grade 1, Gail kept running away from school and hiding. Finally, with enough bribes and threats, she started staying at school. And then in January 1964, our family was complete and Kim was born. So that's just a little bit of Mom's story as she told it to us. Richard Wagamese, an Ojibwe writer, says that we are all story, from the moment we are born to the time we continue on our spirit journey. We are involved in the creation of the story of our time here. What matters, he says, is the creation of the best possible story we can make while we're here. And Mom made a really, really good story. And all of us children and grandchildren got bigger inside because we are part of her story. The last number of years were not easy for Mom, being without Dad, and facing both physical and mental health challenges, and living in a city that wasn't truly home for her. But she still demonstrated such grace and such courage amidst the pain and despair she sometimes experienced. And of course, her hilariously pointed observations about things big and small. Mom, we are so grateful to you for being such a great mom to us. We miss you.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in the boat out at sea. Sail away, kill off the hours. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, find you a lover. Go away somewhere all bright and new. I have seen no other who compares with you. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in the boat out at sea. You belong with your love on your arm. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, go find a lover. Run away, let your heart be your guide. You deserve the deepest of cover. You belong in that home by and by. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong somewhere close to me. Far away
For Grandma. We miss you dearly. We are relieved your suffering is over, but we feel heaviness and a deep sadness in saying goodbye. Reflecting together as her grandchildren, Grandma's joyfulness, silliness, and laughter are the through line in most of our memories. She laughed entirely, head thrown back, shoulders shaking, and she did not take herself or anyone else seriously. For Grandma, there was nothing so difficult, dark, or sad that she could not find humor. There was also nothing too routine or mundane that couldn't send Grandma into fits of inexplicable but infectious giggles. We're so grateful for the gift of Grandma's laughter. In addition to laughing at herself, Grandma was a gold champion laugher at others. She gave no quarter to her grandchildren's questionable teenage fashion choices or to Grandpa's most sincere prayers and reflections. Grandma could be blunt, increasingly so as she aged, but it was usually couched with a laugh and with love. Grandma and Grandpa were also prolific and inventive nickname corners. When we were kids, we only knew older church members by their nicknames, Mary Mountain Ash and Lemon Lips. We had no idea what their actual names were. Jessie recalls, when I was her pill person, Grandma's words, she would take a handful of pills and go, "Jessie, look at how many pills I can swallow without a sip of water," and throw them back like it was nothing. There's got to be a life lesson in there somewhere. Grandma was always there. Some of us had the privilege of growing up in Calgary, close by, even next door. The close relationships fostered in our family were evident in how intertwined our day-to-day lives were. Casual drop-ins to their house were so frequent we barely even knocked on the door, let alone called ahead to let them know we were coming. Their door was almost never locked. Announcing oneself was just a matter of opening the door and hollering at the top of your lungs, "Grandma, hello, it's me." It never occurred to us that their house was anything but an at all times welcome and open space. Grandma had a keen and discerning eye for personal and home style. Trips to IKEA, Winners, and Home Sense with Grandma, Aunt Karen, and Gail and Aunt Kim was almost a hobby. All something of impulse buyers, purchases were often returned on the next visit or traded amongst themselves.
Grandma deeply hated Winnipeg, and her complaints were myriad. Too many trees obscuring the view. Where were the mountains? Really, for her, it wasn't home. Despite her dislike, her moving meant that many of us got to be closer to her and that she got to meet and spend time with her great-grandchildren. Watching our kids noisily rip around her apartment and hallways was clearly such a joy for her, despite her sadness and grief. We're so grateful that our children could meet her and that they could be part of each other's lives. Grandma hated cooking. It was an accepted fact by the time we came along that Grandma had put in her time in the kitchen while raising her children, and now she never intended to cook again. While often joked about, Grandma's vocal aversion to cooking broke with traditional roles and routines, especially for her generation. She was never afraid to be herself, regardless of whether that went against the norm. While her cooking non-preferences were just one small way she exhibited her individuality, the impacts were significant. Grandma and Grandpa's home never felt like a place where we had to be on our best behavior. It was a place our family could come together and where each of us, following Grandma's example, could just be ourselves. It seemed to us that Grandma and Grandpa's relationship was one of real admiration, respect, and equality. They modeled family and a commitment to enduring connection and support, which Adam wrote a poem about. "Where are you going? This is just the scenic route. We could have turned back there." I listened to you argue in the car, observing more than the exchange. The "I am being patient with you," questioning and responsing. Two people who have nurtured so much, have built a tribe. Two people who are not one, but have scraped and molded until the hollows of one are filled by the other. Two people, but it is hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Impossible to distinguish impression from swell. This is anything but natural, anything but easy. Two parts don't just happen to fit perfectly. You have to come to the sacrifice, the patience, caring, worrying, frustrating, and the years have formed a we. And from that we, all of us. You carry together a manual printed in moments, gestures, arguments, hospital visits, renovations, the pages open. This is how you live. This is what it means to love. In our discussions and reflections as Ina's grandchildren, we were struck by how each of us felt so profoundly connected to Grandma. There are 17 of us, spread over 20-odd years, and Grandma and Grandpa made us feel each unique and each special. Jessie wrote, "I never told Grandma that I was trans, but I knew I didn't have to. She knows who I am, and I was never worried she wouldn't love me." Thank you, Grandma, for really knowing us, for really loving us, and for making sure that we knew it.
On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the curative thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life.
And now we give thanks that our mother, Ina, has been carried by the grace of love through these 89 years. Grace, that soft breeze, that mysterious embodying of love, which holds us all through the passages of our human experience. We thank God that Mom's physical and mental suffering is past, and we are grateful to entrust her to her sacred home in the loving presence of the one who created her, and together united with those she loved so dearly. Until we meet again, Mom. As a benediction, I close with an adaptation of the words of Wendell Berry. For Mom. In the day of her work, when the grace of the world was upon her, she made her way, not turning back or looking aside, light in her stride. Now may the grace of death be upon her, her spirit blessed in the deep song of the world and the stars turning, the seasons returning, and long rest. Amen.
He came from the mountain to walk among the wounded. They couldn't see him, but the snow did melt whenever he passed by. He came behind winter, his face was like the sun. They wouldn't see it, but he sang on the bank and made the waters run. In his world we wait, in his hands our fate. Keep on climbing, we shall see his gate in good time. He came to the lowlands, he said, we must have faces, so we could see like him before our wings would ever come to fly. in good time. In His world we wait, in His hands our fate. Keep on climbing, we shall see His gate in good time.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea. Sail away, kill off the hours. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, find you a lover. Go away somewhere all bright and new. I have seen no other who compares with you. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea. You belong with your love on your arm. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, go find a lover. Run away, let your heart be your guide. You deserve the deepest of cover. You belong in that home by and by. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong somewhere close to me. Far away from your trouble and worry. You belong somewhere you feel free. You belong somewhere you feel free.
It's a good enough day to love. It's a good enough day to love. If not today, then when I say it's a good enough day to love. Though the sun may not be bright, the sun may not be bright. If we look inside our souls, there's light. It's a good enough day to love. Though the blankets, rags, and torn, blankets, rags, and torn. Turn my eyes to you, there's a warmth there too. It's a good enough day to love. It's a good enough day to love. It's a good enough day to love. If not today, then when I say it's a good enough day to love.
Kind friends all gather round There's something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside, where strangers are as family and loneliness can't hide. You must give yourself to love if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Walk these mountains in the rain and learn to love the wind. Get up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. I always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. But like sunshine on a cloudy day, you stand before me now. So give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Love is born inside, it's planted like a seed. Love can't give you everything, but it gives you what you need. Love comes when you are ready, love comes when you're afraid. It will be your greatest teacher and the best friend you have made. So give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love and give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love.